Okay, so welcome everyone to Beyond Cows and Dogs. This is the fourth episode. We again have one IIM pass out, a lady who's done an MBA in marketing. This is the most senior most person we have till now. So we'll get a much detailed perspective of how the MBA career happens after the MBA is over. We have Aditi Hingu here. Aditi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Neerav, for having me here. Pleasure to be part of this podcast.
Aditi, you did your MBA much before it became popular and it became the most common thing that engineers and BCom graduates and everybody else did after they did their graduation. And it's been a long, long time that you have done work as part of being a marketeer, as a marketing consultant over these years. Take us through your journey.
So, Neerav, I did my MBA in 1996 to 98, which means I sat for CAT in 1995. That's nearly 30 years now, to the day when I gave my CAT. So, 96 to 98 MBA from IIM Calcutta. And yes, it's been 25 years and more of having been part of this roller coaster ride called MBA and living the MBA dream.
In 95 when you're thinking of appearing for CAT, doing an MBA? It was before MBA was this popular. So what other choices did you have? What were your considerations?
So you are right, Neerav, MBA was not even close to the popularity it now has. There were far, far fewer institutes. There were only four IIMs. And at that point in time, there were the four IIMs up here, and there were a couple of other institutes which were here. So there was nothing else in between. My motivation for doing an MBA was my brother, elder brother, who had done an MBA, had joined Aisha Motors at that point in time. And like a good younger sister, I hero worshipped him. Um, the little that I saw of his career when I was doing my graduation intrigued me. I am a graduate in botany honors from Delhi University. So I am not an engineer, I'm not a commerce graduate. And the choices in front of me were pristine science or get into UPSC, which was something that I considered, or MBA. At that point in time, as a 20-year-old, MBA seemed to be the most in sync with what I wanted out of life. And having seen my brother, I had somebody to guide me. So did it, and thankfully, no regrets.
Right.
I should
Go ahead,
also
go ahead.
mention at that point in time, choices were far fewer. So, to that extent, decision making was simpler. We didn't have counselors in school. There wasn't this functional expertise called career counseling, which is now there for children. So, we just made our own decisions basis what we thought, what our parents thought, what the peer group was doing. So, to that extent, decision making was simpler, not half as complicated as it is today.
Okay. And again, because it's pretty common among daughters, women looking at an MBA, coming, the pressure comes from families. Were you clear that you would be a career woman through and through, or was it like, chalo, theek hai, let's see how far it goes. बाद में तो शादी ही करनी है. I know it's sexist, but again, looking at 25 years ago, it is something that was a big factor at that point.
It was, in fact, even today it is. So
Okay.
I sometimes am sitting on panels of institutes who are recruiting students for their MBA programs. And sometimes from some candidates, yes, we do get the feeling that this is something stopgap till the time, they're wanting, they do something else. That something else could be shadi, that something else could be going and working abroad or going and studying abroad. But for studying abroad, I need a 2 years work ex for which I need to do an MBA in India. So yes, there are all kinds. In my case, it was very clear to me and to my family that I would be a career woman because I come from a family that pays a lot of importance to education. My mother's been a teacher. My dad retired from the Indian Army. And they were very clear that they have to make their daughter capable of being financially independent. So MBA was not stopgap till the time I find a suitable guy. It was very clearly a career decision.
So, okay, so that was 98. You joined Cadbury. You had a few stints across MNCs. Was any of it? What was your job profile immediately after MBA
So
and the early years?
immediately after MBA, I actually joined Monsanto. So sales, rural sales. And for a woman in 1998, it couldn't get more challenging than that. I loved it. I loved it. And to a large extent, I think what I've learned about ground level selling, which is such an integral part of marketing, came from the initial years in Monsanto. I also was part of the team that worked on genetically modified organisms. So BT cotton was being launched at that time. Um, and again, big learning for me, ground narrative versus PR, two very different things. So the PR narrative around BT cotton, which was called Bolgard, was extremely negative because it was thought that it is going to create safety issues because the company is tampering with nature. But the scientific truth was that India has very robust guidelines for introducing any genetically modified organism in the environment, extremely strict guidelines. And all of them were met. First realization that marketing, as a marketer, you have the power to impact lives was when after launch, I was on a market tour, market visit to Vidarbha, Maharashtra, back of beyond region. And some farmer came much elder to me and nearly touched my feet because somebody told him that this ma'am is from the company that has got Bolgard. Now, Bolgard was such a revolutionary technology. I don't recall the numbers now. It's been very long back, but it gave something like a 50 to 60% increase in yield of cotton with about a 70% reduction in input cost. So the farmers' net income improved significantly. First realization that the work we do, which is in the corporate parlance, not really seen as social service or charity or anything, but the work we do in corporate also has significant power to transform lives. So my first experience, introduction to corporate world was through rural sales, which was good fun. I now realize that in hindsight, I ended up breaking up many stereotypes. Women in sales, women in rural India, being able to sell things, being based in Devigarh in Punjab to launch a new product, only woman addressing a farmer meeting of 2,000 farmers. At that time, as a 23-year-old, you don't realize it. But when you look back, you realize that in your own way, you did end up breaking a few gender stereotypes at least. Then I moved on to Cadbury. I've had stints in Cadbury, in Kellogg's, Unilever. And last few years, I have my own, I basically now work as a marketing consultant and a market research consultant. Job profiles in all these organizations has been around sales, marketing strategy, insights. Marketing and understanding consumers is something that I love. And I'm a strong believer that marketing and sales are not different functions. Marketing brings in the pull,
Okay.
sales brings in the push. You both need to work
Okay.
very much in hand to actually create a aha moment for the consumer and the company and the shareholders. So my job profiles have largely been in these domains and all aspects of these domains.
Of it. Did you get any privileges of being an IIM pass out compared to other people who would have joined Monsanto, Cadbury, the early years where you're yet to prove that it's not the degree, it's the person. Um,
At that point in time, the companies that came to recruit from IIMs, the blue chip guys, possibly didn't go to any other institute. So yes, there was an advantage that I could join any of these companies or my batchmates joined these companies because we were in a particular institution where these organizations came for placements. And these organizations didn't really go to any other institute for placements. Like I said, at that point in time, the four IIMs and everybody else. Today, there is this gap doesn't exist. So there are multiple IIMs. There are very good other institutes which are not IIM, but they are equally good. There are a lot of institutes who may be just a notch below that. And organizations have also realized that they can democratize their hiring process, their recruitment process. So I think today the difference is not much, but at that point in time, definitely being from an IIM gave you access to a company, an organization that possibly you wouldn't have had access to otherwise. But having said that, once you're in the system, it is all about how much you can learn and how much you can contribute.
Timeline. You've also been teaching along with the
Mm.
career that you have, the job that you have. What has been your experience of students from different institutes? What are the similarities? How is one particular group of students better than the other?
So, one clear thing I've seen is that an institute is only as good as the students in it. So, the quality of students, the quality of classroom interaction makes a huge difference. And that over the years in the institutes I have taught, I have seen that to be fairly uniformly high. One stark difference I have noticed is that people who have a few years of work experience take out so much more from the MBA program than those who don't have work experience who enter raw. So, but apart from that, across institutes, is it right to say Institute A had better level students versus B? I don't think so. Think at least where I have taught, not at all.
Okay. Your a large part of your career was also before the DEI wave happened. Did you face any challenges because of your gender? And it could be both in terms of um, enjoying some extra care where the institute or the company has realized that okay, we have an employee or we have a set of employees, and probably the company has to change to include them in the team, or the reverse of it where there was discrimination because of your gender that went against you.
Both. So, like you said, a large part of my career was before the diversity and inclusion agenda became so strong for companies. An organization like Monsanto was a pioneer in that. They had me, they had other women in sales and marketing, and they made sure that though we traveled huge distances in rural India, we sometimes were not even in, this is pre-mobile era, so we were not even with phone connectivity. They made sure we were always safe. And I think that goes volumes towards making an employee, man or woman, feel good about working in an organization, that the organization is cognizant of the challenges that you may face and is very proactive about helping you take them head on. So, likewise, actually, for all my other organizations, having been in marketing, I've traveled a lot. Right. We are always doing market visits, consumer visits, home visits. There's always a lot of travel, but there has never been anything which even remotely could have endangered me physically. And I can say this for other women employees also, that I think organizations were very mindful of our physical safety. Where possibly companies are not so mindful about is the casual sexism, which seeps in an office over lunchtime conversations. And again, this is not something which is directed at me or at anybody else. This is just a reflection of who we are as a society. Casual sexism, remarks which have slight sexual overtones, innuendos, is something that has always been a very acceptable part of our society at all forums. Why would corporate India be any different? Now, I think there is awareness and sensitivity that this is not acceptable. So I don't see that happening so much now. But yes, when I started out, it was there. In terms of biases for, say, impacting career or having had to suffer because of my gender, no, never. Never. I think merit counts. and merit counts above anything else.
Okay, another aspect of your career, which is life decisions impacting career. You moved across cities. Uh, you married. You have a child. So there were certain aspects where, again, over a large time period, we make certain decisions which impact our career. And what we want to know is what were the considerations again? How did your career get impacted, or what are the choices that you made in this regard?
So I think one of the most important career decisions a person makes, man or woman, is whom you choose to marry. Because your life partner has a huge role to play in how your career goes, because obviously you're sharing your life with somebody, right? So moving cities, parenting decisions, life decisions kind of become joint. In my case, so I'm married to my batchmate from IIM. So we understand each other's compulsions, motivations fairly well, which is a huge, huge, huge asset. Um, for me, life did not change as much, or career did not really change as much post marriage, but post parenthood, it definitely did. Now, again, this is a time before work from home, online meetings, Microsoft Teams were part of our vocabulary. So I'm talking of a time when if you're in a job, you're supposed to go to work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, depending upon your organization. And you're supposed to be there from 9 to 6, maybe longer. There was nothing called work from home or hybrid working. None of this. Maternity policies were not what it is today. Things were a little different. So at my point in time, people like me and we had to basically create our own networks of how we will manage parenting, how will we manage our work. Things were different then. And some of us dropped out of the corporate race. Some of us consciously took a less demanding role. Some of us continued in our jobs with a lot of support from parents and in-laws and daycares. No specific answer, but yes, it is a tough journey, not easy.
One specific question, more out of curiosity, because you said some of us. Is the husband always the more ambitious person in the partnership, or is more supposed to be the more ambitious person in the marriage?
Interesting question, and the way you've summed it up, it's beautiful because there is the view that gender is a social construct. The sex you are born with is biological. That's nature. But whether you identify as a man and you say, as a man, I am supposed to be the breadwinner, and as a woman, I am supposed to be the caregiver. This is what society teaches us, and this is what is called gendered socialization. And we are all products of that. So honestly, I don't know if man is more ambitious than the woman or if the husband is more ambitious than the woman. But yes, definitely society expects the husband to be more ambitious. And if somebody has to take a back seat, the woman should take a back seat. That is societal expectation that is also ingrained passively in many people because we end up doing that. Things are changing though.
Okay. Moving on to the next section, and you already talked about being a consultant. In MBA again, I had this dream that I'll work for 15 years and then I'll become a marketing consultant. But at that time, the consultants, I think even right now, being a marketing consultant is where you're part of a McKinsey or a Bain, or you have a big name. And then you walk into a company and people listen to you saying, "Oh my God, this is so amazing wisdom that is given to us." How has your experience of being a consultant been, both in terms of financially running your own setup and your interactions with companies, with other marketers?
So I'm a consultant who is not part of the big four. So obviously, when I go into the room, oh my God, here comes somebody from McKinsey is not the response I get. I get a response which is fairly good though, because I think I now come in with a huge body of work behind me. So, um, as a consultant, what I have seen three things which are very different from my life as a corporate employee. First, I consult, so I give advice. I am not the decision maker. The decision maker is my client, right? And when you are handling a brand or a category, or when you are a CMO, you call the shots. Ultimately, you listen to others, but final decision or the head on the block is yours. As a consultant, you are telling your client what to do, or you're giving them three different options with the pros and cons of each. But the client may have considerations, constraints, which go beyond what you are telling them. So the client comes in with a different worldview. And I think as a consultant, the true value you add is when you understand the client's worldview, understand the constraints under which he or she is operating, and then you guide them onto what you think, given under those circumstances, would be the best path for the brand, which is very different from how we work in corporate India, corporate world. So, understanding the unsaid conversations of the client, which go beyond the brief you've been given. That is important. B, ego has no role to play here. It has no role to play here because you may be wise, you may have a huge body of work behind you, you may be giving gyan, but again, like I said, it's not your neck on the block, right? So you have to always be very, very aware of the fact that you are helping somebody else achieve what they want their brand to achieve. The brand vision is theirs. The business vision is theirs, not yours. So you have to align to that. And third, I think it's a wonderful life as a consultant because the amount of learning you get is immense. My corporate life, I have always been in FMCG or related fields. As a consultant, I have worked on fashion. I have worked on edtech. Right now, I'm working on fintech. So there's a lot of domain knowledge that I am learning from my clients, and it's always a two-way work relationship. So I am giving them my functional knowledge, but from them, I'm learning about their industry, which I didn't know earlier. So I think if you have a learning mindset, there's a lot to learn from being a consultant. The negative, yes, it is um, financially erratic. You don't have a salary slip end of the month. And in fact, I know a lot of people who think of, plunging into consulting, but the thing that keeps them back is, at 30th, on 30th of every month, I get a salary slip. So financially, it is, I won't say it's good or bad or better or worse. I will just say it is erratic. You'll have periods of lot of work. You'll have periods when you have good work, but payments haven't come in. So your working capital needs to be managed. That's a huge learning. Once you are a consultant, and especially if you have a team, you have to be very, very cognizant of your working capital. And the second thing is it's a lonely journey. So what I miss sometimes is when I'm part of an organization like say Unilever, I had a team of peers from whom I learned a lot, whom I taught a lot. Even our coffee conversations were enriching. As a consultant, often the onus of learning new stuff lies on you. You have to actively seek out learning opportunities for yourself. So to that extent, it's a lonely journey.
So, what do you do to keep up with what's happening in the marketing world across industries?
Like I said, very actively work on projects where the domain expertise is different from mine, where I actually am greedy for knowledge. So very happy to sit in on client meetings, even when it is not marketing related, even when I'm not being paid for that, because I learn, right? I learn through that. Second, I attend a lot of industry events. a lot of industry events. So you get to know new trends, you get to know new technologies.
Okay, we move to the last section, which is a rapid fire. When was the last time you did a market visit or a consumer interview?
So consumer interviews happen a lot. Again, I am old school. I believe in taking data driven decisions, but also going a step deeper to understand why is the data that. So data tells me what the consumer does. Data doesn't tell me why he or she is doing that. So I do a fair number of consumer interviews, very specific. The last one was about 3 weeks back, Calcutta.
Okay, next question. What is your view of the Gen Z consumer?
So there's a lot that has been said and written about the Gen Z consumer. I'll step away from that and go with what I have seen as part of my consumer interactions. Very aware, very strong views on what works for them, doesn't work for them. And after that, of course, very, very digitally savvy. The world is their mobile, or they rather view the world through their mobile. So there is a lot of content creation, content consumption happening through their personal devices. There, there is a huge sense of tribe. This is my tribe, and this is how we behave, or this is how we interact with a brand. One change that or rather one difference I've seen between some of the Gen Z consumers in the Western world is that they seem to be a lot more in tune with social causes. So they are talking about sustainability, they are talking about global warming, they are talking about marginalized communities. I do not see that conversation happening here in India, except for a very few elite groups who have been educated abroad. So I know we hear a lot that Gen Z consumer is buying into social causes, but I'm not so sure whether that is happening in India. I haven't seen that. The other thing that I've seen is that people fall into two groups. There is one where there is a huge hunger, largely small town, huge hunger to break the what they are calling the confines of their socioeconomic reality today. And the digital world has provided them avenues to do that, which is great. And then, of course, there is the other set of people who possibly are in slightly better off families where there is a significant sense of entitlement. So, two very distinct cohorts. And again, that's very pointed.
But largely the same, yes, but largely the same age group and probably um, way different in way spread out in terms of income and geography.
Yes, yes,
But still watching the same content and the same platforms probably.
yes.
Wow. Okay. Um, the last book that you read and how long back was it?
So, you're talking to somebody who's a bookworm. Okay. So, last book read, this is the one I just finished. In fact, I had it with me, so I kept it to show you. It's called This is
This
Marketing,
is
Seth Godin. Beautiful
okay.
book, which again actually talks of how often a lot of people think marketing is communication and storytelling, whereas communication and storytelling is the last part of marketing. The job of marketing starts much before that, from saying, who is my consumer? What does that cohort need or want? Understanding, then designing a product, then having P&L responsibilities. So often, and I hear a lot of students, especially those whom I teach, come up to me for career guidance saying, we want to be a marketer and we want to make ads, especially social media ads. But that's just a tip of the iceberg. Before you make that beautiful award-winning campaign, you would know it better than anybody else. There is hours and weeks and months of work that goes before that finally crafted ad comes out on the screen. So I think this book is beautiful because it talks of the basics and it reminds us how we need to go back to basics. All of us tend to forget that. So the other book that I've just finished reading is a book called A Gentleman in Moscow. It's a fiction which basically tells about Count Rostov. an aristocrat who is sentenced to lead the rest of his life in the Hotel Metropole in Russia. This is after the Russian Revolution. And it just
Okay.
talks about his life within the confines of the hotel and how he creates relationships, how he finds the willpower to go on when he can't move out of that one building, how he creates bonds. Beautiful book to talk about the resilience and perseverance of human spirit. And very well written. Very, very well written also. So I read that.
Okay. Okay. The last movie that you watched, which you found interesting or insightful as a marketer or as a marketing consultant in your case.
So two movies that actually I have really found interesting as marketer stroke marketing consultant. Pursuit of Happiness. This is based on the book by Chris Gardner. It tells about his life, and Bahubali. Why Bahubali?
Why Bahubali? Yeah.
Yeah, the expression was like, yeah, why Bahubali? Four P's of marketing, the basics: product, packaging, positioning, promotion, price, place, if you want to go to six P's. Bahubali ticks all those boxes. If you look at Bahubali, what is it? It's a very basic mythological story. There's nothing new in the story, but the way the story translates into a larger than life vision, the scale at which it is done, and at the way it is executed, it's a beautiful product that has been put out there for the consumers, in this case the audience. Often in marketing we underestimate the power of execution, but strategy is only on paper. Your consumer doesn't see your strategy, consumer sees what you execute in the marketplace. So Bahubali is an example of possibly an average product in terms of the storyline, but made spectacular by the sheer vision, grandeur, and execution. Excellent packaging, publicity, promotion. Everybody before the second Bahubali came out was talking of why did Katappa kill Bahubali? And that did the marketing job for them. I mean, hats off to whoever came up with the promotion strategy of that movie. I really think they deserve huge amount of accolade. Small things. Since there was a gap of, I think, 2 years between Bahubali 1 and 2, they reran Bahubali 1 in a few select multiplexes so that people go and watch Bahubali 1 to refresh their memory. And they ran this whole uh, content strategy around who killed Bahubali or why did Katappa kill Bahubali. And word of mouth marketing, the moment your material becomes viral, you have a winner on hands. So I think in terms of sheer marketing lessons, that movie Bahubali, not the content of the movie Bahubali, but the way Bahubali came out and was delivered to us as consumers. 100 on 100 in my book.
Okay, perfect. Your favorite quote or belief or a dialogue, which is something that you find inspiring or um, just helps you in your thinking in marketing.
It's actually a very old one, but I think it's been true all throughout. It's even more relevant now, especially in the context of the number of products we are being flooded with. Actually, David Ogilvy's quote, "The consumer's not a moron, she's your wife." I think it sums up marketing so crisply, because we again tend to underestimate the consumer. And we think all our jargon, we love jargon. As marketers, we love jargon. As performance marketers, we love it even more. But all of that fails in front of sound common sense of the consumer. And I've seen that litmus test always works. When I am working on a campaign, at the end of it, I ask myself that as a housewife, as a wife, a mother, would I buy this? And often the answer is yes, or it is no, because I'm not, what is being said is not making sense to me. And that's a great litmus test. I know it's an old quote, but it works for me every time.
Awesome. One last question. Your a topic in marketing being discussed today in your circles, in the industry events that you part of. One highly underrated topic and highly overrated topic. So two.
So one which is highly underrated, I think you've touched upon it, is e-commerce. So there is a lot of conversation around e-commerce efficiencies, e-commerce logistics, e-commerce unit costs. Where the conversation is not happening is the realization that the e-commerce consumer is also having the capability to buy from GT or from modern trade. Ultimately, this is the same consumer. So using e-commerce as a strong marketing channel is something that is not being spoken about enough. And e-commerce has huge potential because the amount of data we get to know about our consumers is mind-boggling. But that data is not being harnessed efficiently enough to understand them better. It's being harnessed very well to execute well. But in terms of product innovations, in terms of pack innovations, that data is not being, I think, done justice to. So that definitely is something that needs to be um, spoken about and thought seriously a lot more. The other one is good old-fashioned consumer visits. Nothing beats meeting the consumer and talking to him and her. Again, there is a tendency to use AI and use content which is on social media to validate your hypothesis, which works great in many cases, time and cost efficient, but works well only when you have done a certain level of pre-consumer understanding prior to that. So I think that is something which is missing.
An overrated topic discussed today.
Artificial
Just
intelligence and will
too
it
much
take
of discussion.
artificial intelligence and will it take away jobs of copywriters and art directors?
Why do you think it's overrated? And given that you are actually helping your clients execute some of the strategy that you advise them on.
So, see, what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is what we have taught the machine to do, right? It is the machine picking up on inputs that have been given to it by me, you, and people like us, right? And then, of course, collating all of it and giving us the best possible output. But an artificial intelligence cannot think out of the box. It can't. And while there is a lot of conversation happening that AI will take away jobs of copywriters and designers and visual artists. Possibly it will to some extent, where you are doing base level copywriting or you are creating content for social media posts, which in any case have a shelf life of 4 hours or 5 hours. Right. After that, nobody sees it. But what it definitely can't do is take away human creativity. I mean, AI cannot become a Piyush Pandey. It can't, right? So that creativity element, which comes in only when some of us think differently, when there are few of us who are like Richard Branson, who just see the world so differently. AI can't do that because AI will see the world the way we have taught it to see the world. So as long, yes, I want the same similar looking stuff, great. AI works. But the moment I want to do something earth-shatteringly different, I think the human brain is what works. So to that extent, I think AI is overhyped for these kinds of job. Routine jobs, great tool. Creative jobs, not so great tool.
And quite ironically, it is the creative jobs where AI is being used a lot more with all the different generative AI tools. Wow, that's where we are. Uh,
So that's what I'm saying. So if I'm, like I said, if I'm looking at social media posts, which have a shelf life of 4 hours, AI works beautifully because I put up my brand logo, I put up the brand message, I put out a few guidelines. It gives me 40 images in like 1 minute and I can choose, tweak, etc., and work. So that's generative AI, right? But if I want to disrupt the market, if I want to say create a communication, क्या स्वाद है जिंदगी में, which totally changes the paradigm of chocolate category by saying A, adults can have, B, it is okay for a grown up girl to dance in the field with a chocolate, C, it is okay for a grown up cricketer to blush. AI can't do that. You need a Piyush Pandey to do that, right? AI can't do that. So I think that's where generative AI cannot be Picasso. It can be great in copying Picasso and turning out stuff which looks like Picasso made, but it can't be a new Picasso. For that, you need a human brain and human skill.
Great. That brings us to the end of our podcast. If students or institutes want to contact you for guest lectures, for panel discussions, to invite you to their events, how can they reach out to you?
They could drop me a mail at aditihingu@outlook.com.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Aditi, for your time and for all the variety of topics that we talked of. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Neera, for having me here and for this conversation. It was wonderful to be part of this podcast with you. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you.